Ashley Hamilton started as a waitress. Then she achieved financial freedom with 35 rental properties. But this wasn't the finish line. This was only the start.
But because I had those freedoms, I was able to really dive into it. And I lost 100 pounds, in over 8 months and been able to maintain that.
Ashley transformed her health and kept improving her real estate investments.
It was hard for me to sit back and say, hey, Ashley, you own 35 properties. You are financially free. You can kind of slow down. I think that did not hit me until both of my kids were in college.
In this episode, you'll learn about Ashley's journey to invest time in the growth of her kids, transform her health, and try new and fun types of real estate investing that have also made her a lot of money. If you ever wondered what happens after financial freedom, this is the episode for you. Let's get started. So Ashley, I had to look it up. It was all the way back in 2022 when we had our last episode, and it was an amazing episode. I'm going to link to that so everybody can check it out. I mean, your story is incredible. You started off, I think you said making $20,000 a year. You were raising 2 kids. You did this thing part-time and built up a real estate empire. So everybody needs to go back and listen to that. I also featured you as one of my main small and mighty real estate investors in the Small and Mighty Real Estate Investor book. So all of that will be linked in the show notes. But what I really was excited about today, Ashley, is just I wanted to catch up with you and see what's going on. But I wanted to start this conversation where the last conversation ended. So basically, I'd love to hear from you, like when you've made it, you bought a certain number of properties, you got a certain amount of cash flow coming in. A lot of people from the outside in would say, hey, you've achieved financial independence. You've got FI now. I want to know, like at that point, kind of where we ended last time, what did that feel like for you when you look back on that? Like just getting to that point, hustling, having those, I think you had 35 properties at that point. What did it feel like for you?
To be honest, it felt amazing, right? To not have to work and depend on other people and to deal with some of the struggles that I dealt with for years and day to day. But I would just say it was just a broader feeling. I would say it was more, because it was more than financial independence, right? It was also being able to break generational curses. And that honestly, it sends chills through my spine every time I think about it, because obviously when we start our real estate journey, we're thinking about us and trying to get out of the rat race and, our immediate family, but we don't realize that, we have children or maybe even relatives or even parents that aren't able or weren't able to experience these things, and to be able to pretty much set the standard or set a future for your whole entire family, your whole entire generation going forward. That was a big, aha moment, or a really amazing feeling that is kind of hard to, describe in words, obviously, especially being at the time I was 36 years old. I'm 38 now. So, it's definitely just an amazing feeling. One I really can't put into words. I need to figure out how to do it, but it was deeper than real estate. It was deeper than financial freedom when I was being able to, change the trajectory of my whole family.
I would love to, if you don't mind, dig into that part a little bit as a parent as well. And I know some of the times that you and I have talked in the past, we were talking about our kids, and I remember at one point you were helping one of your children kind of transition into adulthood. I forget what exactly that, they graduated from something. And could you just talk about that, having the space as a parent to be able to be there for your kid and help them through those transitions? Or maybe if you have a story about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for sure, it was something that I did not experience on my own. And I kind of set out early on when I started to invest in real estate that I was really doing it for my kids and to give them things that I didn't have, and also teach them things. Early on, set up 4 pillars that I wanted to give to my 2 children. And basically what it was is to be able to graduate college, debt free if they choose to, not to take out any student loans or have any debt, to have a 750 credit score or above by the time they were 18. And I achieved that just by adding them as authorized users on my credit, to have a car that they own free and clear so that they can, be able to travel and things like that and get back and forth to work. And then also to help them buy their first investment property or create their first business. So I feel like if I were able to achieve those 4 pillars for my kids, that, even if they didn't go down the road of real estate, or if they chose something differently, at least they could start with an advantage versus a disadvantage. So at this point, I have 2 children. Both are first generation college students. They were the first in our immediate family to go to college. And they're honestly, I'm not going to lie, they're kids. So they're still trying to find their way. They were definitely able to benefit from the pillars that I set up, but I feel like they're going into their own direction right now. And like real estate is like, hey, if this doesn't work, I can do the real estate, but just the freedom of them being able to choose. So my daughter, she has a real estate background. She helps me a lot with the real estate, but she's actually trying to start her own daycare center. She studied early childhood education. She's been certified, and she even interned at daycare centers. So that is like the focus that we're trying to work on now, getting her own first licensed daycare center in Michigan. And it's been pretty exciting. And then as far as my son, he's still 19 years old. He's off of college right now. It's the summertime, but he wants to do something in videography or something like that. But right now, just trying to find his own way. But again, doesn't have the struggles that I had when I was growing up, where not having reliable transportation, not having a college education, or having debt, college debt and things like that. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And in the meantime, they're helping me in the active business, which is the Airbnb.
I love those 4 pillars, Ashley. Can I borrow those? I mean, that's so good. Great. So graduate debt free if they want to go to college, have a credit score of 750 or above, a car that's free and clear, which is amazing because that's the kind of the freedom, flexibility to go work and do your thing. And then the final one.
It would either help them start their own business of which they choose, or buy an investment property.
100%. Got it. Okay. Perfect. So that you kind of see the idea of being an angel investor or advisor to them for their business, for their real estate property. So cool. Had they been responsive to that? I have a 12 and a 14-year-old right now. And they've always, they watch my videos here and there, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know, they're either going to go the opposite direction or they're going to be interested in this stuff. So I'm just curious how receptive your kids were to it.
Right. So kind of the same thing, right? We'll go travel around the world or speak publicly. And like you said, you're on platforms and books, and everybody is at all of you and seeing how amazing you are. And your kids are just like, oh, well, that's nothing, So that's kind of how it is with them. Like I said, they're like, oh, I can always go and work in my family business, if this doesn't work out. So I'm always secondary, I would say. And, it's just the generation. I mean, you have young kids being able to make multi-million dollars just on TikTok and things like that. So I feel like they are helping because they don't have a choice, honestly, with some of the active stuff. But far as their personal goals, I feel like that's secondary for them. But my daughter, she's looking to purchase a property to run her daycare center in first, kind of like a small, work the kinks out and stuff, and then expand to a commercial building. Lastly, I just wanted to point out that we have, I learned this strategy when they were about 14 and 16, because they're almost 2 years apart, but investing in a self-directed IRA. I wish I learned it earlier on, but I was able to put them kind of on payroll, but I don't want to use the word payroll because they weren't being paid as a W-2 employee. It was more so they were being paid in my business as long as it was under the standard deduction, which was about $12,600. So they can earn about $12,600 a year working for mom. My son was doing email marketing. My daughter was doing digital flyers. And what we were able to do was invest in a self-directed IRA up to, I believe it was like $6,000 that year. So they have about 3 years of $6,000 being deposited each year into their self-directed IRA. So now we're at the point where our 3 IRAs are going to partner up and buy an investment property. Now, I know it's a big strategy. Obviously, I'm not a tax strategist, but it's a great way to build wealth for kids. They're not too excited about it because all the profits have to go back into the, the IRA. Yeah. But what we can kind of do is have this growing in the background. And about time they're, 45 or whatever age, they will have this, lump sum of capital in their IRA that they can use just in case other endeavors don't pan out, or, who knows where life will be at in 25 years. But that's just a small strategy that we are using to kind of keep them into the real estate business and keep them invested.
Wow. Actually, you are so smart and forward thinking, because I mean, that IRA is going to be the compounding of that. They want that money right now, but man, the compounding of that 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, when they're 40, 50 years old, I mean, that's going to be a lot bigger, right? I mean, they're going to have this big nest egg.
Yeah, absolutely. So anticipated to be about 800,000 to $1 million, just depending on what the market's doing, things like that. But imagine if I did this, I think the IRS recognized you can your kids can work in your business at like 7 or 8 years old. So from 8 to 18, had we done it then, it would have been, 10 times as much. So definitely that's why these podcasts, these books and interviews are so good to listen to, and even repeat at a time, because these little nuggets could help. Like if I would have learned this information, like I said, when they were 8 and 9, imagine how much more wealthier they and I could have been, using the strategy. So I always like to, drop some nuggets wherever I can to pique your interest to do more research, obviously.
This is why I like talking to you, because I'm taking notes too. I'm like, I haven't set up my kids in one of those. I've got to get on this. So that's really cool. As a parent, I love that aspect of financial independence, just the ability to kind of transfer knowledge, transfer information, but also my impression of what you've done too is just that your life is the main message. You being who you are, Ashley, and you're demonstrating, hey, this is what's possible as an entrepreneur. This is what's possible as a teacher. So that to me is inspiring too. It's just the fact that your kids get to see you. They emulate in their own way, but that's the big deal.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. And that actually just brings me until like once I achieve, financial independence. And I would say it's really hard again for my mindset, right? Because I came from such a disadvantage in the beginning that it was hard for me to sit back and say, hey, Ashley, you own 35 properties. Hey, Ashley, you're making almost double what you're spending. You are financially free. You can kind of slow down. I think that did not hit me until both of my kids were in college. And for the first time in my life, I was an empty nester and home by myself. Because just really quickly, I had my daughter at 17 and my son at 19. So I was a teen mom. I was still living with my mom. And then at my 18th birthday, I got my own apartment. And then me and my daughter moved together. And then my son. So I had never lived by myself. So I woke up one day, I was 35, 2 kids in college, and 37, 2 kids in college, and a nest egg of rental properties, cash flow, financially free. And I'm like, now what do I do, right? Yep. So after 2 weeks of me kind of like being sad and, thinking, what's going on? My mom kind of like called me and said, hey, you're 37 years old. You're a multimillionaire. Like, go enjoy your life. And to be honest, I didn't know what life really was, but because I had the freedom of being financially independent, I had bought back my time with rental properties, which is, really passive. So I instantly started a health journey. And I feel like that out of everything, no matter how much money I make, how many properties I have, how much net worth I have, being able to get your health back and reverse pre-diabetes, high blood pressure, is amazing. And I know we want to dive into that more, but I just want to stop just in case you want to add or, had a certain direction.
No, that's 100% where I wanted to go because as your friend and somebody who's stayed in touch with you over the last few years, I feel like you've had a second act. Like, you act one was amazing. People need to check that out. But then act 2 to me is even more amazing because what we talked about with your kids and the kind of setting them up, but also your personal journey. So I would love for you to, whatever direction you want to go with that, with your health, with that part of the journey, I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it just was a journey that worked for me. You all can pick your own journey, but I adapted a plant-based lifestyle like early on in 2023, as soon as I became an empty nester. And because I had the freedom of real estate and financial independence and cash flow coming in, I was able to really dive into it. So I started a plant-based diet and just was really, really strict, really clean. And again, this would not have been possible, and I not saying even feel bad talking about it because I know that I had the unfair advantage of not having a 9-to-5, not having the young kids involved, but because I had those freedoms, I was able to really dive into it and then started working out about 5 to 6 times a week and really changed, like I said, the trajectory of my life, added more years to my life. I lost 100 pounds, in over 8 months and been able to maintain that. Yeah. And even like I said, with the gym and being able to go get IV drips and just other things to help me, maintain it. It all stems from being able to be financially free, if that makes sense.
It takes energy and it takes time to take care of yourself. That's the irony, right? When we were at BPCon last year, or maybe it's you and I were both, it was like 6 or 7 in the morning. You and I were both in the weight room. I'm like, hey, there's Ashley. You were hitting it hard. I was like, she had a trainer and she was sweating. I said, man, I need to go do Ashley's workout.
Right. Yeah. And it's so amazing because before I would never be at a 5-star resort with buffets and, swimming pools and, alcohol. And I would never, like, the gym would always be empty. Right. Or that's what I would think. But even at BPCon, I was like, you can tell these investors because like the gym was packed, you know, so
it was full.
Yeah.
Sure.
So you can tell there was a lot of investors probably who were able to buy back their time with their financial independence to be able to do those things. So yes, that's definitely has been a help, but also, like I said, to be able to reverse, because a lot of times being an entrepreneur has got to be one of the stressful, very stress intense industry. And even hearing back on studies with CEOs and the rate of heart attacks at a young age, I think it was like average 45, just stats globally, having heart attacks and just the amount of stress that comes with running a business. So being able to achieve financial freedom kind of at an early age was able to kind of buy back my time where I can focus more on these things. And again, reverse some, like I said, I was pre-diabetic, had high blood pressure, and even, overweight, of course. But even if you look thin on the outside, it can still be the stress and things that have a toll on you. So again, I would say that's the biggest benefit, obviously having the cash flow, having the income, having the doors, but the biggest benefit will be able to have the time to pour back into yourself and your health and reverse, some conditions.
Yeah. I don't know where this quote came from, but somebody said like the greatest wealth is health.
For sure. Yes,
Like
absolutely.
if you got a bunch of money in the bank and you got no health, I mean, what's the point? You're able to use the wealth that you generated. So I think that's so cool. And I mean, obviously you had your mindset, you're a hard worker, you had an incredible mindset with your real estate, but was there any kind of mindset shifts you had to make in terms of that health journey of like eating a certain way, working out? Like what kinds of struggles or mindsets did you have to work on to make that happen?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know if it's easy for the masses, but for me, it was very hard. I felt selfish because you have to put yourself first in your mindset. So I feel like as a parent, especially a single parent, again, I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, I was dead last on the list. Like even my dog came before me, right? You would think it's easy, like, hey, it's me. I'm just going to put myself first. But it really was a mindset shift. I had to kind of mentally prepare myself for that. I started to read books and things like that, or listen to podcasts, even meditate, because I kind of felt guilty. Like I'm I'm spending too much time on myself, or there's no cake or candy in the cabinets when the kids come home from college. So it seems easier said than done, but for sure the mindset to be kind of selfish again temporarily, that was a real struggle for me though, because like I said, I felt guilty that I wasn't, I felt like I wasn't being the best parent because I was putting myself first, or even, I would miss things. Hey, if I had a workout, like that's what it is. I'm not gonna sacrifice on that, but it's necessary. I definitely don't want to, it's definitely necessary. Again, it could be temporary, but when you're getting into a goal that big or changing your lifestyle that drastically, you have to temporarily be selfish and put yourself first.
It's like you have to go all in on it, just like you would any other goal, but you have to be committed to it, which can feel selfish because for all of us, when you've been in survival mode or you're in parenting mode, like you're naturally you have to kind of sit in the back seat. Whereas now you're like, hey, I got to be the focus here in order to make these transformations that I want.
Yeah, for sure, and that's exactly what I did. So that was the mindset shift that took place in order for me to achieve that.
So cool. Wow. 100 pounds. You're looking great. Yeah, and you're
Thank you.
Sticking with it. Was there anything surprising about that whole journey over the last couple of years that you wouldn't have expected when you first started?
For sure. I would just say the way I feel. For sure. I didn't realize how bad I was feeling for so long, but the way I feel every day, I'm excited to get up, to, buy new clothes or to go work out. I never thought like I would, be excited to work out. But most importantly, I would just say the biggest like surprise, just the fact that I can reverse like some health things that I kind of thought that I was stuck with or that were hereditary because my mom had high blood pressure. So things like that I thought like I could never get over, I was able to, overcome those. I don't want to, transition too much, but I really want to say this. Life insurance. I feel like as an investor or even, someone who watches YouTube all the time, that's a strategy for wealth building, life insurance. So I got all, into the videos and watching everybody on YouTube. And I was so excited to call up an insurance agent to get life insurance. I know how important it was. And I didn't qualify because I was overweight. And obviously I could have got some like cheap policy that really didn't cover much and wouldn't cover my net worth, but I didn't qualify. So after I lost the first 80 pounds, I was actually able to pass a health exam to be able to get life insurance, which was huge because now that took a big weight off of my shoulders because you want to have enough in case something happened to be able to cover all your assets and your debt. You don't want to leave your kids with something. So I definitely did not want to, forget about that because that was huge, being able to qualify. And the shocker there was they said that my heart rate was the same as the athlete. And I'm like, what? I never thought that they would use my name in the same sense as the word athlete. So
yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, that's such a good point. Thinking about life insurance and all some of the things, the health effects and the pre-diabetes and blood pressure, but just even be able to gift your family if something happened to you with life insurance was another one I didn't even think about.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I said, so I definitely didn't want to forget that because again, we hear about everything on YouTube and we just think, oh, we should do it. And, you want to do the right things, but sometimes if your health isn't where it needs to be, you can't even do it. So that was definitely a big win for me.
Love it. In a minute, I want to talk about some of your sort of new real estate investments, but I'm going to get there. But there's something else I thought I was just curious about to check in on. Part of this kind of new transformation, this new period of your life was just sounded like, number one, health, take care of yourself, kind of have to be a little bit selfish to do that. The other, it seems like I've been watching your Instagram channel a little bit. You've been enjoying life a little bit and spending some money. And I think this is such an important topic. This is important for me too, that, we're frugal, we save our money, we invest in real estate, we make these sacrifices. Some of us have a hard time actually enjoying enjoying that money when we have enough of it. And so can you talk about that? And what kinds of things have you been trying to enjoy a little bit more now that you're there?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, as soon as I post something on Instagram, everybody's like, "Oh, you're not the same person," and everything like that. So, number one, like I had spent $750,000 in real estate like 3 years in a row when I was growing my portfolio, and never spent anything on me. So, if I spent $2,000 or $5,000 on myself, it was like everybody came out making me seem like a bad person. But again, it was kind of the work that I did and putting myself first and not feeling bad for things like that. Again, if you asked me to spend $5,000 on a set of windows for my property, no problem, right? My Gucci and Chanel was Home Depot for sure. Black Friday, I was outside at Home Depot. So, it was so easy for me to spend for the properties. And then when it came to myself, it was very hard to do. So in the work that I did with my mindset and putting yourself first and not feeling guilty for enjoying your hard work, that was kind of something that I did. So before, every time I bought a property, I started to buy myself something nice, whether it was a purse from Chanel or Gucci or something like that. And again, not going overboard, things that I could pass down to kids, like jewelry and, like I said, purses and things that we can pass down to my grandkids and things like that that'll kind of be in my life forever. But yeah, that's kind of what it was. So started to enjoy the fruits of my labor. But I would guess the biggest thing and kind of the most controversial thing is I was able to buy a Tesla, right? And I feel like it fits my lifestyle as well as helped me buy back time, because I save so much time at the gas station, which also triggered since I'm at the gas station, let me buy a pack of M&Ms, let me grab a bag of gum. And now I haven't been in a gas station in over 2 years. And then just with my son, his vehicle got totaled. So I ended up getting a Range Rover as well, because I've always wanted one and needed the big SUV. But a lot of people may say, "Oh, you're spending more." But actually, I took a class in tax strategies, and both of those vehicles are tax write-offs. So they're in my business name. I get to write off the expenses for them every single month. And with the Tesla, I was able to get a $7,500 energy credit just for purchasing it. So now it's like I get to live this kind of extravagant life, but me still being frugal and true to my own, rules. I'm using it as a tax advantage. You know what I'm saying? So it's twofold there.
No, I think it's such a great lesson. I mean, everybody's got their own things they want to splurge on, but I've been working on that too. Like for me and my wife, it's been a lot of travel. Like just, hey, if we want to go travel, let's just do this. And if we want to stay in a little bit nicer hotel, let's just do this. Or if we want to eat this meal, like my wife and I like going to eat nice meals. It just kind of loosening up a little bit and using, especially where you are and where I am too. Like a lot of the money we're making is coming from, we're not touching the principal. Like with the properties are still there. You're living off rental income, or you're selling a property here and there. Like it's okay. Like you got to enjoy it a little bit and have fun with it. So I was applauding you looking at all your posts and saying, "Hey, good for you, Ashley. This is awesome." And I think everybody's got to find their own kind of flavor there. But I think it's an important part of the journey that's hard for us to talk about, because we are always deferring gratification a little bit and waiting a little bit. But it's okay to taste the fruits of what you're doing this for in the first place.
Absolutely. And I know, because a lot of times I wouldn't even post it, or I would feel bad even posting it. But I do want people to see, because you want to see, like, this is my life seriously on Instagram. So you see me every single day in my properties. You want to know that, hey, I'm not doing this for nothing, just to, you know what I'm saying? I want to eventually do it so that I can enjoy the fruits of my labor. So that's why I kind of sprinkled it in on the Instagram, because I felt like it was very important for people to see, hey, Ashley works sometimes 10, 12 hours a day, but she is able to enjoy it as well. And then exactly with traveling, like you said, being able to go to even conferences, that's something that I can learn and network with. So it's a big benefit to my business, but those things can get expensive as well, depending on where you're traveling to and things like that. So being able to travel more and buy things and also get a tax write-off for kind of shiny objects has been a real big benefit for me.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So we've talked about health. We've talked about the luxury journey, which I think is cool.
Right.
I do want to go back to real estate investing. And one of the things that kind of I get pushed back on a little bit is, small, mighty investor, you achieve financial freedom, and that people are like, well, I don't want to stop growing. Like, why would I want to, stay small and never, have big ambitions and things like that. And my pushback was always like, hey, you could, like, why not get the financial freedom first? And then you can still keep growing. Like, you don't have to stop. And I think you've been the perfect example of that, is that you're still growing, learning, doing new stuff. You've been working, it sounds like, on short-term rentals. You've been buying properties at a tax sale. So talk to me a little bit about, what does your real estate business and journey look like now? What are you playing with? What's fun for you? What are you working on?
Right. Absolutely. So number one, as you all know, I'm from Detroit and I invest in Detroit. And even though I'm thinking nobody sees Ashley, I'm in there, in and out the house 20 times, I'm going crazy. The neighborhood started started to notice, and the neighbors, they all started to know, and they were talking about me. So it was mostly positive, sometimes negative, but you can't control that. But the biggest advantage is I started to walk out of my properties, and the neighbors start asking me to buy their houses. Hey, I'm ready to go. You've been here for a while. So out of nowhere, wasn't planning on buying anything. 3 of my neighbors on 3 different blocks approached me, and I was able to buy 3 deals in like 3 months. And this was just in 2025 alone. So just off of the neighbor referrals. And then next, I had a tax auction at the end of 2024. This was September, and I wasn't even planning on buying anything. I had a good friend that was interested in buying in Detroit, and she came down here, and we went out looking at the auction list, and I said, hey, I'm going to put some properties on my short list and just see what happens. And Lord and behold, I was able to buy 4 properties in one day, even though I wasn't planning on it. So that's the great thing I would say about the financial freedom. Obviously, you want to kind of slow down and enjoy the fruits of your labor, but because you've created this system, or you've worked so hard, some of the fruits of your labor are starting to come back with, like I said, a lot of my properties that I purchase are referral based, or neighbors and things like that. But my goal in this next journey obviously will be to maximize, right, without buying more doors. And I know it sounds crazy, because again, if I can make $10,000 off 2 doors versus $10,000 off 10 doors, like why not do the 2 doors? And it's more so, like you always talk about in your book and stuff, just the managing of things, and things can go wrong. And even just having 10 different mortgage payments, like if I can, conduce that into the smallest amount of properties, but be able to maximize the income, that would be worth it. So in this phase of my journey, now that I have reached financial independence, I've been doing just that. So one thing that I learned was, and this is in Michigan, Detroit, proper, that any property that's zoned multifamily could have up to 4 units. So I own 3 duplexes that had 2 units in it. And because of that fact, I can have up to 4 units. I've been creating and transforming the basements into 1-bedroom apartments. So now essentially, without getting another duplex, I've been able to create 3 units versus 2. So I was able to quickly, increase my units by 3 just by finishing the basements, adding egress windows, turn them into 1-bedroom apartments, and it's duplicatable, right? If you got the square footage, you can just rinse and repeat. So I did that I have 2 of them going on, and 1 is finished. Actually, we have a bathroom going in the basement right now. Also, I've been taking 3-bedroom bungalows and creating 4 bedrooms, again, with the basement strategy, but it's not a separate apartment. It's just a separate bedroom in the basement. And the reason I've been doing that is because I started to heavily invest in Section 8 rentals once COVID hit in 2020. There's a shortage of 4-bedrooms in Detroit, and there's a surplus of people on the waiting list. So to service that need, there's so many people looking for a 4-bedroom and not a lot of 4-bedroom properties. I've been converting my 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom properties into 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom properties strictly for rentals for Section 8.
That's great. How does that translate in terms of so when you put that property in the market, is because there's so much of demand, are you able to fill them up really quickly? Do you have a waiting list? Like how does that translate to what the bottom line and the time it takes to rent your property?
Yes, absolutely. And I do kind of want to talk about Section 8 really quick and just some changes, so we can definitely, pick back up to maximizing income without maximizing doors really quickly. So in 2020, I think I had about 20 properties, but I had no Section 8 tenants. But once the rental ban came, I said, hey, hold on a second. I didn't want to sit and cry or blame the government. I changed. So I instantly went to a couple webinars, and I exclusively, from 2021 up until 2025, basically, I exclusively only rented to Section 8 people. So again, when we entered the pandemic, we had 30,000 voucher holders in Michigan with no place to go, because some people just would not rent to Section 8 people at all. They thought they would tear up their properties. Well, once the government stopped the rent and did the rental ban, everybody jumped on the bandwagon. So what went from 2021 and 2022, me having 20 inquiries on one property, all with Section 8, and on top of that, getting a premium rent amount, it started to dwindle, and people were able to be more picky because they had more, products. And again, the wait list drastically reduced. So that's when I started to realize the trend. Hey, everybody's doing Section 8 now. What can I do to set myself at an advantage and to be able to still play in this arena? And that's when I started converting the 4 bedrooms, again, because now we're back at that 10 or 20, qualified applicants per property, where it had dropped down to 2 or 3 realistically for the 3 bedrooms. So that was going all good until January 2025. You have a new administration again. And I don't know if it was this administration or previous, but they've been make some big changes. They're making big changes in the Section 8 program. Right now, they're toying with only allowing people to be able to stay on the program for 3 to 5 years. So again, instead of me crying, blaming, the politicians or blaming the administration, I started back renting to cash people. So just literally May was my first time since 2021 renting to a cash paying tenant versus Section 8. So that's just my transition. Again, you guys can see the news and hear all the social media posts, and we can blame anybody, but at some time, especially as an investor that wants to be here for a while, you have to pull up your pants and just, you have to adapt to it. And, instead of crying, just try to get ahead of the curve. So I'm already, tweaking my application and stuff to be more, cash tenant friendly.
So smart. Yeah. I think there's so many layers of wisdom there, but I think the big one that I'm hearing is it's just entrepreneurs pivot, entrepreneurs change. Yeah. And we don't, and it's not that we're not interested in the environment and why things have happened, but it's more about like, this is what happened. This is my business. How can I adjust to it as quickly as possible? And you're a fast adjuster. Like you've done it 2 or 3 times. You do what you got to do. In the future, you'll pivot again. I think there's so much to learn there, whether you do Section 8 or not. Like this is the reality. Like we all have these things that happen. Like I'm in a college student market, and one of the things, the regulations have a lot to do with the number of students can stay in a house, or you can't rent out 4 bedrooms to 4 different students. There's regulations that allow that, but there's certain zoning that lets you do that. If you have an RM4 zoning, or if you're in a commercial zone. So I mean, if you know these little nuances, like you've studied, there's ways to still do it. You just have to you gotta pivot. You gotta be creative. You gotta think outside the box, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And normally it's about, I would say, 3 to 5, every 5 years, you would have to look at these strategies. But since COVID happened, things have been changing. And I was just looking back and saying, wow, since 2020, first I pivoted to Section 8 rentals. And then the 3-bedroom, that's normally what I have. That's most common here, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom. Those started to get, slow down. So I had to hurry up and pivot and start adding these 4 bedrooms. And then now I have to pivot back to cash paying tenants. So it's been a lot of pivoting in the last 5 years, but super grateful. But just getting back to that more income with less doors thing, really what I have been doubling down on is the short-term rental market. I mean, I've been doing amazing with that, and it's just so much success and also so many ways to gain income from that, again, without buying more doors or without renting. So definitely would love to talk about that.
How do you see, like, when you decide to do a short-term rental property versus a long-term? Because you have both in your portfolio, and I think that's one of the best mixes, is having some long, some short. So how do you think about what's an ideal short-term rental property and what's a long-term rental property?
Absolutely. Location is number one. So I have a total of 5 short-term rentals, and I've been exclusively using only the Airbnb platform until this last duplex, which was 2 units. I started using some other platforms, but number one, the location of it. Again, all of my properties are located in the city of Detroit. And again, things have been coming positive. The media attentions have been more positive lately, but we still have a lot of struggles. And everybody knew, like, if you turned on the news or YouTube 5 years ago, Detroit was a war zone, right? Detroit has all these bad areas. So the fact that I'm able to generate, a lot of revenue and be successful and get booked in the city of Detroit, number one, is definitely a great feeling and something to speak to the direction that Detroit is going or moving to in a positive direction. But number one is the location. So this duplex, the most recent short-term rental that I have on the market, honestly, I just signed a 90-day lease for it. I didn't even know. It was for an insurance company. So that's the number one. So when people, obviously every day people have fires and they lose their homes, and hotels are not ideal because, obviously it's a tragedy to lose your home. But if you have kids and they're in school, you are trying to get ready in a hotel room. It's just not as convenient. So a lot of insurance companies look on Airbnb to find something to, replace or to try to keep the same quality of life for their client. So I was able to sign a 3-month lease or a 3-month short-term rental at one of my Airbnbs with an insurance company, and they paid a premium for that. And that was based on the location, as well as it's close to a hospital and a park. So it obviously makes sense. You can do traveling nurses and things like that, or just people that are interested in traveling or, walking out and seeing nature and things like that.
Yeah. So location sounds like the amenities that either the person who's going to live there for 2 or 3 months, close to a hospital, traveling nurse, that would be a convenience for them. You'd want to be located close to the hospital. And then otherwise, though, most people think about Airbnb and they think just like vacation rentals, or somebody's coming coming to town, which definitely happens. But you're saying also, if you're open to different types of tenants, you can get these longer term, short term tenants, almost the midterm kind of tenants, 2 or 3 months, which could also be at a premium rent, but you're getting somebody to stay a lot. That's a lot of nights if somebody's staying there for 3 months, right?
Yeah, for sure. So just to be honest, I know obviously midterm rental, long-term rental, but my focus was strictly short-term rental. And the reason I entertained the 3 month was because it's a duplex. So I can still get that short-term rental because you're still getting way more money on the shorter stays, the 2 to 5 days, right? So that's the only reason I kind of accepted it or agreed to that for that specific property. But for sure, absolutely. So I know when any festival is coming to town, any concert, we just had Jelly Roll and Post Malone here, which was huge. And like all 5 of my Airbnbs were booked up and I was super excited about that. So any holidays or concerts, I'll know what's going on. And then also just surprised of how many people come to Detroit to work, so I'm getting at this point now, I've been doing Airbnb. This is my it's 2.5 years. I'm starting to get repeat clients, but I know we're talking about it a lot and I haven't shared the revenue. So really quickly, just wanted to share, how extremely well it's done. So originally I started off with 1 for 1 year and then I added 2 more last May. So with the 3 short-term rentals, and it was just, I would say it's an 8-month period because there are peak seasons here, but I was able to generate $112,000 just off of the 3 units. So this year that I've added 5, my goal is like $250,000 for the year, but I can literally pull it up and I post every month on my my social media page. I post the revenue monthly. So right now I'm averaging about $15,000 to $18,000, but now that the 2 duplexes are starting to get rented, I'm hopefully going to be getting at least $20,000 a month just from those units.
Congrats, Ashley. Yeah. That's really cool.
Thank you so much. So again, what I like to do and what I would say about it is it kind of makes me feel good every month because like today is May, the end of May, right? May 28th. So I can go onto my calendar and see that I already have $14,000 in bookings for the month of June before June even started. And then obviously at the end of the month, you see where you're ending up. And it's 100% has always been more than at the start of the month because that's just what's committed already, but you'll still get those last minute bookings and things like that. So that's one thing I like before I even see the month start, I've already have revenue, built into those short-term rentals. Yeah.
I love it. So the big picture is you kind of mixed in these short-term rentals and you didn't do this before. I mean, you kind of hit a plateau with your 35 properties and this has been sort of part of your second act. It's like, all right, I got a new business model here. I want to try out short-term rentals. Not only does it make a lot of money, but I would imagine it's also challenging and kind of fun for you too, right? Is that the case? I'm just curious if it's been exciting.
Absolutely. So that's what I was going to tell the audience as well. It's like I'm running my little hotel, right? So first of all, I do want to caution it is an active business. It's more active than the long-term rentals for sure, but it doesn't feel that way. You got a couple of good cleaners, and you a designer, or if you set it up yourself. But once it's up and running, it's less active as you would think. But it's just really cool. Like I add like LED lights, or I leave certain snacks, or even the guests themselves, just hearing their story. A lot of times they like to talk to you or, interact, or just when I come into a property after someone leaves and I'll see like, balloons or champagne glasses or just things that they've done. It just makes me feel good being able to provide an experience. It's kind of like you're running a little hotel.
Got it. 100%.
And it's more like, what can I do next? Right. What can I do next? But just again, I would just say that is my second act. And just like any business, what I find myself doing is like, yes, I can sit here and say, I've generated $18,000 a month or $20,000 a month. But instead of me changing and using that income to kind of, feed my lifestyle, I'm just reinvesting it into the property. So that's how I was able to grow from 1 to 5, just 2.5 years, and I have 1 more under construction. So I think 6 will be the sweet spot. But, obviously there's so many other opportunities involved in it that, this may be like, who knows, maybe in a couple of years we'll come back on and I have 20 of these things, right?
Yeah, 100%. This kind of goes back to your 4 pillars that you taught your kids. I feel like you run your business in a way that you're pivoting, you're exploring new options, you're looking at new businesses, but you also, from a financial standpoint, you've always been really disciplined about reinvesting your cash. Early on, I remember you paid cash for a lot of your properties, and eventually, you refinanced. But you got a little a big machine going here, where you got the cash flow. It's a feedback loop that then it allows you to start new things. And I'm sure there'll be a third act and a fourth act and a fifth act. Like that's what's so much fun about being an entrepreneur is that I tell people, like when I turned 37 and I felt like I was really financially independent as well. It was that moment when I could say, what do I want to be next? Like what do I want to be when I grow up? Like I'm 37. 47. Right. I got a lot more time to go. And I think that's the big message I want to give beyond all these the specific wisdom you've shared. It's just that you're a great example of somebody who is figuring out what's next. And that to me is one of the coolest parts about the options of having financial independence is you can go into Airbnb, you can go on a health journey, you can spend more time with your kids, you can buy some cool luxury items that are just fun. And that's all part of the journey. And you get to write that script. It's not somebody else doesn't have to write it for you. Like, this is your script. This is Ashley Hamilton's version of what a good life looks like.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And just really quick to piggyback on what we've just started, and it starts in August, but I'm super excited. And another way to get the children involved is we've started renting out. So I bought e-bikes. So a part of my health journey was we would go down and ride 20 miles at this new area in Detroit by the water. And I just really got into riding bikes. Even I think when I was in Cancun, I rented the bikes on the resort there. So I bought these 2 e-bikes and I downloaded the waivers from the same people that rent them out in Detroit. But now for $75 each, you can rent these e-bikes, and we've created little tours of the neighborhoods. So I'm only using them in 2 properties just based on the location and what's around them. But now we have like these scavenger hunt tours. So you can add that revenue renting out for $75 a bike for these e-bikes. They'll pay for themselves. I have a waiver. I have a helmet and a safety jacket. They have to sign and show that they're, able to do it. But that's another way to make more revenue. Again, back to our kind of topic that we talked about, maximizing without, doing more, adding more. And then even like airport pickup and drop off. So I'm really trying to get my son involved in that, and I'm telling him, hey, strictly you, but you can make $100 for a round trip, you know what I'm saying, for a guest. And then obviously the conversation, what brings you into Detroit, I feel like that'll help him, be able to talk to more people and get to know more people, because I feel like where children would kind of slow them down, or what the disadvantage they have than us is they don't have to talk to anybody no more with social media, right? So the fact that if we can add these Airbnb pickup and drop offs, it'll help them be more personable and realize that it's more to life than this, social media and things like that. So again, being able, if anytime in my business that I can, first of all, create a win-win for everyone, right? So the consumer wins because all my Airbnbs are over the top. I'm going to always have surprises in there that they don't know about, and just things to kind of pique their interest. And then I'm winning because of the revenue, but now my kids can even win because they can participate in it and see the income side of it, or just see the people side of it, or to know why I'm doing things. So that's what I want to do now in this phase of my life. I don't want it to all be about the money. If it's a lesson, or if it's just a give back aspect of it, how can we still, generate income, but still create a win-win environment for everybody and a good experience that's very memorable?
Wow, that's super well said. Ashley, this has been so much fun, and I want to thank you, and just, you're an inspiration. I've been taking a bunch of notes too, like, man, I need to do that, That's a great idea. And I feel like the takeaway from this conversation for me is how much opportunity is out there, whether you're just starting or whether you're already achieved financial freedom. There's a ton of opportunity, whether it's renting e-bikes or starting Airbnb or doing Section 8 or tax. There's opportunity out there. If people want to stay in touch with you, Ashley, I know that they should follow your social media channel, but tell people what you got going on, how they can stay in touch with you. And I'll put links to all this in the show notes and the video description below.
Thank you so much. So the easiest and best way is Instagram. You can find me at Detroit_investor on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well, but that's the easiest and quickest way to reach out to me. If you click the link in my bio or send me a direct message on Instagram, you can book a one-on-one call with me where I can give you an action plan really quickly, basically just like the next 2 to 3 steps that you need to take to buy your first or next investment property, or if you want to get into short-term rental, or if you're already in there and trying to maximize, you can click the link as well. But yeah, social media, I answer all my DMs still myself. So feel free to reach out. Anything I can do to help, I would love to.
Ashley is one of those people that you can tell you just listen to her for 45 minutes here. You're gonna get a ton of value anytime you talk to Ashley. So Ashley, thank you so much. I look forward to connecting again soon, and we'll see you soon.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure, and I can't wait to come back and see what other crazy things I've been doing right.
Absolutely. Act 3 is coming soon. Yes. In this episode, Ashley shared about her pivot to short-term rentals. But you may be asking yourself, Chad, how do I even start with short-term rentals or Airbnb? So in my next video, you're going to meet Joe, a former HGTV contestant and Airbnb expert, who walks through his journey, his real numbers, and how he scaled to 10 properties in 8 years. If you're on YouTube, click on the thumbnail above me here, or you can click on the link in the podcast or the YouTube description below. I'll see you in the next episode.